Out. Okay, Stephan, go ahead and introduce yourself and then go ahead and tell us what you've been doing.
Okay, so my name is Stephan Ganchev. I'm actually an ex-student of Deb when she was back in Iowa State. I was doing my MFA there. One of the greatest professors at ISU that I met. And yeah, no problem, no problem. Well deserved. So yeah, I graduated with my MFA, came to California. Now I work for, I'm a UX designer at Intel. Let's see what else. Well, actually, as a side project, what I'm going to introduce you to today is this little application that I've been working on with a friend of mine. So I'm just going to walk you through kind of like our process, how the idea came up, all the tools that we've been using to develop it. So hopefully interesting stuff to you. Was that?
That was perfect.
Great, great, great. How do you like my nerdy headset?
Oh, no,
Dope, right? All right, great. Well, I've never used this tool before. So let me see, how do I share my screen? Oh, share screen. Okay. Hopefully the cleaning crew is not gonna come in soon.
Right?
Share screen. Okay, so I'm sharing. Okay, so this is kind of like the software I'm using at work. That's cool. Okay, let's see if this works. All right, can you see a bunch of dudes?
Yeah.
All right, okay. So here are my climbing buddies, and why I'm showing you this picture is this is kind of how the whole idea for the app started. When I moved out to California, like, what is it now, 4 years, I was, kind of bored on the weekends, so I decided to join this mountaineering club, and met a lot of people through that mountaineering club, and really enjoyed the whole process of climbing mountains, and it's really exciting. But what I noticed when we were doing these things is that people would often wouldn't have the right gear, so they would ask their friends, can I borrow some gear from you? And if somebody's brand new, like I used to be, you don't have anything. So it's a big upfront investment. So I started thinking, how about what are some of the things that people can do in order to get all the gear without spending so much money. So I was thinking about, can we just create some sort of a repository for all this gear so people can, get stuff from there and, either rent it or buy it on the cheap. And REI, I don't know if you guys are familiar with REI, but it's like the biggest outdoor store for outdoor gear out in the West Coast, and I don't know if it's on the East Coast. But the problem with REI, it used to be a place where you rent your gear, but they kind of stopped doing that. And there's little stores here and there that allow you to do that, or they offer that service, but there's not that many of them. So we decided, me and my buddy, who is also very enthusiastic about product development, we decided to, start something ourselves. So we didn't know what exactly it would be in the beginning, but we knew that we wanted to work on that idea. And what happened is we actually became roommates, and what you see right here is our living room. So it's kind of like our little workspace, so very startup-y style, right? So we started working on the product, and we initially just started with just brainstorming ideas of what this thing should be. So a lot of people call this type of process design thinking. I don't know if you guys talked about that, but you know, it's essentially just a spit out of ideas that come to you and your colleagues or whoever's on your team, and try to make sense, organize all that. So we created these boards with a bunch of stickies on them to try to organize all the ideas. And as you can see, we also made some little sketches just to understand what the stickies were about, right? And we finally kind of came with this idea for this mobile app where um, a person would create an account and would be able to see all the gear, all the outdoors gear that people are sharing around you. So, you know, it'll be GPS enabled. It would be an easy way to just um, find whatever is around you and, you know, message the person who owns something that you need. And go from there, you know, start the messaging process and then figure out um, a way to exchange the goods, a way to exchange the gear. So we started with this concept, and then we we came up with a cool name, Gearmo, and you know, a cool icon. Pretty proud of the icon. Uh, but and it's actually live on the App Store, so you can check it out. But we started working on this thing, and we initially, you know, followed kind of the lean methodologies of product development. I don't know if you guys ever heard about that. Heard of, you know, lean startup and um, agile software development. But those are all methodologies that we really like and we wanted to implement for this product too. But the Lean Startup kind of gave us that book, which is really famous in the startup world, gave us the inspiration for how to approach the product development process. And, you know, some of the biggest learnings from there were start with just simple sketches, simple prototype of what you're trying to build, and then present it to some people for some feedback and figure out, validate your idea as quick as possible. And the other thing is, um, if you actually validate the initial idea, if it actually turns out to be valid, then start working on what is called a minimum viable product, MVP. So for an MVP, the basic idea is try to uh, don't try to work on all the features that you can imagine your app or software product would ever need. Try to work on the most important ones in the beginning, just so that you can, uh, by working on the most important things, you can launch earlier and then, you know, actually validate your idea with users, and you can start learning about what your users' behavior is like. So essentially, getting customer feedback as soon as possible. So that was the main idea that came from that book. Highly recommend it as a read. And then, yeah, we followed these methodologies and we started with just simple sketches of the application. So what you see here is uh, no, just a screenshot of a sketch that I did in Balsamic. Balsamic is this really cool tool um, where it gives you all these sketchy looking components that you can quickly plug into a mock-up or create several screens to create a prototype. And then from there, I took all these screens that my friend and I created. He was also, I taught him how to use Balsamic, which was pretty cool because he's a developer. But we took those screens, and then what you see here is actually a screenshot that I took from InVision. So InVision is a very cool online tool that allows you to quickly create these prototypes with, what do you call them? click maps that you can create on whatever is clickable or tappable, and then that opens up, the corresponding screen. So you can make it look and feel like an actual app, but it's going to be just a set of screens that you link together. So no data passed back and forth. But it's really cool for when you're trying to get an early validation um, of your product you're trying to create. So that's what we did. We put all these screens into InVision, and actually InVision has a mobile application that you can download and then run the prototype from the mobile application. So you actually get a mobile look and feel, and actually people can play with it on their mobile phone. Um, and you can do some usability testing, which is what we did. We just set up some meetings with, friends and acquaintances that are interested in the outdoors. Um, and we I don't know if you guys have talked about usability testing, but what we did was set up some tasks, wrote out some tasks that we wanted to test out with users, and then we just presented them with this particular prototype. So to create the prototype took us maybe not more than a week, which is it's actually kind of slow in the UX world. But yeah, in a week you can get something that's code. I would recommend going through this process. And then, any questions?
So far, so good.
All right, excellent. And then, we kind of validate our idea. We figured out that we've messed up on a couple of sections of our prototype. We did some redesigning because our initial prototype was, not that great. And with those learnings, we just decided that it was time to start building. And in order to start an iOS application, in order to build an iOS application, you need to have this tool called Xcode on your Mac. And then the programming language for that application is called Swift. So I was brand new, and my friend, both of us, we were brand new to iOS development. So we downloaded Xcode. We started watching, YouTube tutorials, Linda tutorials on Swift, how all that works. A lot of Overstack articles about how to do different things in Swift. And, as we progressed in developing this app, we started getting more and more proficient in Swift. So it was a great learning experience. So that's the front end. On the back end, we have, if you're interested, we all that data passing. We created like a MySQL database, and we're getting all the data through an API that we created, which is all written in JavaScript, actually, Node.js and Tails.js. And that's really cool because these are kind of the latest and greatest technologies to develop web applications. So it was like a win-win. And so we put all that together. We started working on it. In the meantime, I also started, mocking up some screens because, I'm kind of the UX person on this project. My friend is like a hardcore developer. So what I started doing is just mocking up all the screens in this tool called Sketch. Uh, it's kind of like a new UI tool that a lot of UI designers are using these days. It's I highly recommend it. It's awesome. It's amazing what you can do with it in a very short amount of time. But in Sketch, I kind of before we started developing each screen, I refined the design and created mockups for each screen. And then another cool tool that I started using, I forget what it's called. Anyways, uh, I'll send you a link to it. But there's multiple tools that do that. But this one particular tool, Zeppelin, it's called Zeppelin, allows you to export the screens from Sketch and then spec them out. So what that means, I can give the exact positioning of each graphic, font sizes, paddings, margins, whatever you can think of that designers do, to my developer, to my friend. And I would develop some of these screens, but he would also develop some screens. And in order for us to have consistency, specking out all these screens was really important. So Zeppelin allowed me to just export all these screens and just present all the specs to him. And once you present specs to a developer, they're amazing at how efficient they are with that. So yeah, so that's Sketch for you guys. If you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. It's not really that expensive. It's like 99 bucks. I think that's pretty good. Um, and if you're developing interface, doing UI design in Photoshop, just use this. Or Illustrator for that same reason. Anyway, so the next step after we got some of this, after we had like an um, initial version, initial alpha of our application, then we started testing it out. So iOS, well, App Store allows you to download this really cool tool called Test Flight. And Test Flight essentially allows you to send out your app to invited users. So you're not actually submitting it to the App Store. You're submitting it to this Test Flight application. So that means, even when your code, when your product is not ready to be launched in the App Store, you can still get some feedback from users on how your product is performing, if it crashes a lot, usability, is the usability okay? So yeah, that was our next step. We did several iterations, several alpha or beta tests in this case. And got some really good feedback from that. So constantly don't sit in vacuum, just constantly iterate and get feedback from people. That's really important. And as of this past Sunday, we are officially on the App Store. And yeah, it's been quite the journey getting to this point. And our app is fairly basic right now. It doesn't do that much, but it's what, like I mentioned before, it's our minimum viable product. It gets us going, and it allows us to gather feedback from hopefully customers pretty soon, and figure out what we need to focus on next in our next iterations. And yeah. So here's a very inspiring final slide. The journey just begins, and hopefully it's not going to end soon. It's going to be a big journey, and some next steps, I guess, would be really marketing the crap out of this and promoting it a lot. And keep on building new features to make this experience even better.
Stephan, that's terrific. Would you take some questions from our students?
Sure.
All right. I have a bunch of students who are have been wireframing, prototyping, and working on apps for their senior project. And so I think I'll let some of them ask some questions that they may have, or you know, show things, whatever they want to do. So yeah, you can come up here. Let's see here. More. Okay. Come up there and tell him your name.
Hello, Stephan.
Hey.
I'm Gerardo. I was just wondering how hard or how easy was it learning Swift or going about the stage after the prototype of your app?
Yeah, I mean, it takes some time to learn Swift. It's definitely not, you know, I'm a JavaScript developer mainly, so because I like the flexibility of JavaScript. It's pretty easy. You don't have these. Anyways, I don't want to get into the details of it, but you know, it takes time to learn Swift and to kind of understand how iOS development works. But once it starts clicking for you, it becomes easier and easier. But that's true for everything in life, right? Um, but yeah, you definitely have to put in some time to um, just coding and watching tutorials online. That really helped me. And then watching, you know, Googling stuff, Googling how to do different things. There's tons of tutorials and snippets of code out there. So uh, there's no reason for you not to be able to learn it.
And did you learn like in a progressional type of like in intervals, or did you like learn foundations and then you build on that coding foundation and then you build upon that?
Um, well, we started, you know, I started with kind of the basics. You know, when you watch some, for example, some Lino tutorials on Swift and Xcode, they just go through the basics, you know, how you place a button on the screen and make that button do stuff for you. And our application is a lot more complex than just, you know, a button showing a pop-up, right? So we started with the basics, but then, you know, you slowly evolve into your learning, and especially when you have a project, when you have something that you want to develop, you know, something um, like a screen that you want to function in a certain way, you start just, you know, messing around and uh, you know, I Google so much. You just go on Google and type whatever problem you're facing in Swift, and usually you'll find somebody that has had that problem before, and they'll provide you with some solution.
I'm currently working on a barbershop app, which involves like booking and searching for the location and stuff. So I'm really interested in going about like the coding and stuff. But I
Cool.
do have some knowledge of just Java, but
Uh-huh.
it's usually used with Eclipse. So that's kind of why I have to transition into Xcode a little bit.
Yeah.
Wanted to see since that was your approach, so kind of
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Swift is very similar to Java, so you know, it'll probably not be too hard for you.
oh, okay. That's actually very encouraging.
Cool. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, develop the app.
Okay, I'm going to come back up here, Stefan.
Okay.
Can you give us any, I guess, any insights on graphic standards and the interface design, best practices, things that you discovered?
Well, I would definitely recommend if you're developing for iOS to follow their guidelines. They have the whole human, what do you call it, human interface guidelines,
Yeah.
which are online. And, if you stick to those, you'll be in pretty good shape. But, for the most part, we just kind of explored what other apps are doing, For example, ours, kind of mimics how Airbnb works, how their app works. So we kind of look at their interaction patterns and how they lay out their screens, et cetera, et cetera. And we, copying is not a crime.
It's probably kind of a good thing because you want a sense of familiarity
Exactly.
here.
Hmm.
One of the things we've been trying to emphasize is we're not reinventing familiarity. We want it to feel familiar, but we want the information architecture and the features and the data to be correct.
Yep.
And then follow the guidelines that they've got. We've been working with some of the students are working Axure, right? And we've been using Sketch.
Awesome.
You know Troy Abel?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard the name. I never met him.
Okay. Troy was using InVision and Sketch, and he said the same as you. He's like, don't use Illustrator and Photoshop. It's a bad direction.
Yep. He's completely right.
So we've been doing that. How many were on your development team? Just the two of you?
Just two of us.
Wow. And how long did it take you from kind of inception to completing it?
From like the idea, starting with the idea, oof.
Yeah.
A year. It took us a year.
A full year.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, a full year.
And you guys were working full time at the same.
Yep. So this is nights and weekends.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you feel like you will make another app?
Oh yeah, I think so. Well, we definitely want to see how things go with this one. There's, like I said, we're just starting off. This is just the beginning, hopefully. But down the road, for sure, I really like the process, and I really enjoy working on interesting things, interesting ideas, things that I'm passionate about. So it'll definitely not be the last one.
So do you encourage students then to think about things that they have interest in and pursue that?
Absolutely, yeah.
We feel like the designers like yourself are very creative people, and I thought this was an amazing project you took on, Stephan. So
Yeah. And sometimes, us designers, we're kind of, at least I know people that are scared from getting into the more development stuff. But if you get into the development of a product, well, first off, you'll be much more marketable out there. But also, it kind of gives you independence, like we have on this project, to just two of us, kick out this product.
yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think, we do, in our program, we focus on the design aspect, the interface, the usability. We did paper prototyping in class, and we did user testing and developed, search tasks and time on task and, that sort of thing, and the branding and the logos. So I think the next addition to the program, or addition for these students, is probably looking at the coding and learning how to do that, and then giving them just enough flexibility that they could work with another programmer and really have a viable team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, kind of like how we did it in ISU. You have the engineer folks from what was it, Virac?
Yeah.
And mixing that with the designers from our program. I think those were some amazing projects that we came up with.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on marketing this product? Do you see this making money? Is this going to actually produce income?
Well, Yeah, I mean that's kind of why we're doing it, right? In the end, yeah, we definitely have several ideas for business models. One pretty achievable one is to just have promoted gear. So if you think about on Twitter or Facebook, they have promoted tweets. So we can do the same thing here, which would be a pretty easy win. It
Uh-huh.
doesn't really take that much development. It's a pretty easy feature to implement. Um, but we are playing with a bunch of ideas for a business model. But right now, we're just trying to get the word out there and get people to use it and figure out how they're using it. How can we make it better? Is
Yeah.
it,
I
all that stuff.
think this is a very good direction, and all of the indications for our economy say that the private business owner is going to be the model of the future, and person-to-person services, things that really connect people,
Yeah.
is a lot where our economy is going. And I'm sure you probably even hear that at Intel. They probably have a lot of changes coming up.
Yep. Yep.
Do you ever look at having a venture capitalists working with you or other funding sources?
Yes, yes, absolutely. We haven't really pitched to anybody yet, but I think that'll be that's on the roadmap for sure.
Yeah, and you clearly have the minimum viable product now that becomes a great demonstration of concept, the viability of it for sure.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Do you guys have other questions for Stefan? Yeah, you want to come up here? Are you online?
No, no.
Come on up here. Here's Tomas.
Hey man, thank you so much for being online and sharing us your
Hey,
process.
no problem.
Quick question for you: how did you like arrange your user feedback, like the whole process? How did you arrange getting feedback?
Oh, I see. Well, it was mostly acquaintances and friends that I have, people from the club, that mountaineering club that I mentioned earlier, and yeah, I just send them out some messages on Facebook or text messages and set up meetings with them and just gave them the app and gave them the set of tasks that I wanted them to complete. And I had my friend with me for all these meetings, and he was taking notes, I was taking notes, and we were also recording the sessions. So back when we would go back to our quote unquote office, we would actually go through those. Sorry,
Or
through those video recordings and kind of analyze what our users were doing, and that was super valuable.
have you done any like digital or market research into your customers, like, or have you done that yet so far?
I mean, our market research kind of came from my experience with kind of that industry, the outdoors industry. uh, so my experience was the market research, right? Because I was already involved in it. uh, but yeah, the feedback from all these people that we met with was kind of our market research.
Right on. And there, and like from your user testing, like you saw that people like really wanted the service as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they were excited to see it, to see it actually as a working product. We definitely got some good ideas with every interview that we conducted. People were, I mean, you've probably seen that in your usability testing. People are always eager to give you some their ideas about what you're working on, and we definitely encourage that with every interview.
How did let's say for us designers who are not like we're not hooked up with a lot of like coding or like computer engineering or that side of it, what are some good ways for us to evaluate who's a good person to work with in terms of like knowledge and stuff? Like, what should you be looking for? In like,
Well, you probably want to find somebody who you can get along with. That's the most important thing. If you find somebody who you get along with pretty well, even if they're not the greatest developer in the world, um, I think they're still valuable because you guys will be on the same page, which is really important.
so that's all the questions I had right now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm back, Stefan. My students said that you did a very good job of really breaking down the process.
Yeah, thanks. Yep. PowerPoint to the rescue.
Right. Well, it was really nice to see the ideation phase, the sticky notes talking about the interaction you had planning, the early phase, that you had from balsamic, and then moving it forward into an actual viable, testable product, and then also the beta testing that you did online. So
Right.
cool.
Thanks.
Is there anything else that you would want to tell these guys? I mean, some of my people here are designers, but they really do want to take the plunge and start coding. And were there any coding camps? Are there any websites, any resources that you totally recommend to learn from?
Like I said, well, for somebody who's just starting off, oh, there's the cleaning crew.
Do we have to leave?
No, I'm good. Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, so for somebody who's never programmed before in their life, taking one or two computer science 101 or whatever number it is, might be a good idea because I had that background already, even though, my master's is in design. I had that from college. I had computer science.
Is Java
So,
where you would start?
yes, I did Java in college, yes. But I haven't used Java since then, so it's kind of funny.
My first degree was computer science, but it was way before Java.
Right. Okay. What were you on?
Oh God, Pascal.
Oh God.
I know. And then,
I feel sorry for you.
an object-oriented basic, and I had to teach
Nice.
myself object orientation on my own way back in the day.
Right on.
So you think Java's a good starting point? Getting some basic coursework, maybe?
Pretty much any object-oriented language is fine. They all kind of look the same, work the same. Yeah, Java is pretty standard for those early classes, right? Actually, I don't know. I'm just pulling that out of my butt right now, but yeah, Java might be a good start.
Yeah.
What else is out there? Swift is very similar to Java, so yeah.
So if they started with Swift, there might be tutorials and things that would start them at a basic level.
Yeah, I don't think they teach Swift as a ComSci 101 classes. Python. Python was the other one that's really popular in those classes.
Yeah.
But Python is it looks a little, it's not like Java. It doesn't feel like Java when I was taking a course in Python.
I know. We had another speaker talking about the Python course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was one of my grad students that taught the Python. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I took a Python course in ISU, which was great, but I didn't really find any application of it in the work that I do.
well, this has been very helpful. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us tonight. I have about a third of the class that is interested in this as a subject area or a career area that they're working their senior projects in. And talking to somebody like yourself is really valuable to us because we really just love to see, what you did and how it turned out. So,
Sure.
So that's great. And thank you very much. You guys want to say thank you if you're logged in? Yay! Thanks.
Yay.
I will look forward to seeing you next time and I'm come to the Sacramento area, okay?
Yeah, let me know. Let me know.
Right? We'll do coffee. You have a great night and thank
You
you so
too.
much. We'll
All
see
right.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.